Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will begin with chapter 19, verse 29. Chapter 19, verse 29. And excuse me. Sorry, one more thing. And our learning this morning is sponsored by the Zach family in honor of the yahrzeit of Mrs. Elsie Zach, Elisa Basia Bastov, Zechron Lebracha, and Sham should have an aliyah. Thank you very much to the Zachs. Chapter 19, verse 29. We're in the process of the destruction of Sodom. And it was when God destroyed the cities of the plain. And Hashem remembered Avraham. And God sent Lot out of the destruction. That even though the cities in which Lot resided, the area in which Lot resided was being destroyed, God still spared Lot through his remembering of Abraham. So the question, of course, is obvious. What does remembering Abraham have to do with saving Lot? Let's see Rashi. Rashi on Pasuk Chavtes, Vayiskor Elokim Abraham. Mahu schiraso shel Abraham alot. What does that mean? Niskar shahya Lot yodea shesara ishto shel Abraham. So a very interesting thing when the Jewish people, when Abraham and Sarah and Lot were in Egypt, we had this story in last week's Parsha. That Abraham and Sarah presented themselves as siblings and not as spouses. Lot knew the truth. V'shama she'amar Avraham b'Mitzrayim al Sarah achosihi v'lo gila hadavar shayachas alav. Lot did not expose Avraham and Sarah that they indeed were married because he had compassion for Avraham. Lot had compassion for Avraham. God has compassion for Lot. That's what Rashi says. So this, according to Rashi, was Lot's merit to be saved. And presumably part of that is, if you help God's special people, there's a special merit. In other words, it's not only that Lot helped somebody or another, it's that Lot helped. If Lot helped anybody, that would have been a merit. But there's a special merit that Lot helped Avram. That presumably is the pshat according to Rashi. Look at the Ramban on Pasuk Chavtes. The Ramban says, "Vayiskor Elokim Abraham vayishalach es Lot." Inyan HaKasuv Hazeh, topic of this, the meaning of this pasuk. Ki Lot nischasid matzadik, leleches imo lashut ba'aretz b'asher yelech. Lot accompanied Abraham to go on his journeys with him. V'hu shenemar vayelech ito Lot. Right at the beginning of last week's parsha, Lot went with Abraham. Ki letzavos shelo halach. Lot wanted to be with him. Lot wanted to accompany him. V'lachein Hayelos chuslat silo bischus Avraham, ki ba'avuro hugar b'stom. So now, therefore, Lot does have the right to hold the coattails of Avram's merits, because he tagged along with Abraham when it wasn't the in thing to do. And now Rashi, or the Ramban, makes one more point. In some sense, Lot's in stone because of Abraham. Lot's in stone because of Abraham. Lot's in stone because he broke with Abraham. No, the Lule Avraham Odenu Haya B'charan Amoladatam. If not for the fact that he would have accompanied Avram on his journey to Canaan, he would have still been sitting in Haran. Avram didn't have to leave Haran. Lot didn't have to leave Haran. V'lo yitachem shetavoy lavra bavur Avram sheyatzav mitzvahs kono. Really interesting. Ramban says God wouldn't make it that something bad would happen to Lot because he had accompanied Abraham on Avram's mitzvah journey. And if Lot were to be destroyed in stone, indirectly, that means that Lot perished because of having accompanied Avram on Avram's mitzvah journey. That God's not going to let that happen. Very, very interesting. Also very interesting. Ramban says that's why Avram risked his life to save Lot with the war. We had in last week's parsha, there was this battle, and Lot was taken hostage, and Avram risked his life to save Lot. What made Avram do that? Was just Avram was a really nice person? So the Ramban says Avram felt a special responsibility because Lot wouldn't have been in this mess if he wouldn't have left Haran in the first place. So very different ideas from Rashi and the Ramban. Okay, let's now go on to verse 32. And this is one of the more bizarre sections of the Torah. It's only a few psukim about it, but so the bottom line is, Sodom is totally destroyed. Actually, let's go to verse 31. Sodom is totally destroyed. It's basically Lot and his two daughters. Long story short, those are the people that survived. Vatomer habchira tzira avinu zaken. The older daughter said to the younger daughter, our father is older. The ish ein ba'aretz lavo aleinu k'derech kol haaretz. There's no men around other than our father. 32. L'cha nashkes avinu yain mishkevo imo. Let's get our father drunk, and we'll have relations with him. Unchayem avinu zara. And then we'll have children with our father, which of course, is one of the arayos. This is one of the relations prohibited by the Torah. They each have children. One of them is named Ammon. One of them is named Moav. Both of them, Moav literally means from the father. Ammon is a little bit more subtle, the child of my nation. But that's the story, and that's the beginnings of the nations of Ammon and Moab. Ramban, Lamed Beis. V'tam unchayem me'avinu zara, v'ulai ki amru nase anachnu hamase haroi lanu, ki rachem hu elokim, v'nolid zachar unekeva v'iskayim ha'olam mehem, ki olam chesed yiboneh, v'lo l'chinam hitzilanu Hashem. First of all, the Ramban says, they say we will create offspring with our father. Ramban says they're not saying that as a fact. They don't know if it's going to work. Their father's an older man. What they're saying is they'll try, because Olam Chesed Yibana, the world is built with kindness. We can't believe that God saved us for nothing. And as far as they know, they're the only three people left in the world. They don't know. They don't know that it's only Sodom and Amorah. They don't know. All they know is there was total desolation, and the three of them survived. So why did God save us if not to keep the world going, keep the human race going? V'nei hayut snuos. They were modest women. V'lo ratzu lemor laviam shegiso son. The idea of coming up to their father and saying, hey, let's just get married, would be bizarre. Kipa Noach mutar bebitos. The first point the Ramban makes is it could very well be that those prohibited sexual relations in the Torah of father and daughter are only for Jews. But it could be that a non-Jew is not prohibited in that regard. That there's a discussion about it, but it's possible. So if you assume that a non-Jew is not prohibited, so they're not doing anything ethically wrong, okay? Actually says the Ramban, they're trying to save the world. Even within that, they're trying to do it with tznius. In other words, they felt it was not appropriate to actively ask their father to marry them, sort of strange. So therefore they say, let's do it this way. Let's just get him drunk and he won't know what he's doing, and then we'll move from there. That's the first scenario the Ramban presents. Oh, shayadavar mechur ma'od b'einei adoros ahem, v'lo naseh kain ma'olam. There is another possibility, which is that this was an exceedingly disgusting thing in that time, and nobody could imagine doing such a thing. V'chein rabosenu ba'agados meganim eslov ma'od. There are various rabbinic quotes that disgrace Lot very much for this event. So the Ramban kind of paints two very different pictures, but it seems that one way or the other, that they didn't know what else was going on. They didn't know that if they would just travel a little bit further, they'd find all these men, and that this was their way of continuing humanity. And Ramban has one possibility that by the book they weren't doing anything wrong. The other possibility is they were doing something that was considered very immoral for the time. Okay, let's go on. It's a long parsha, a lot here. Let's go on to chapter 21, verse 9. So big skip here. Chapter 21, verse 9. back to Avram and Sarah. Yitzchak has been born. They make a big party when Yitzchak is weaned. And then right in the pasuk, right after the description of the party, in verse 9, it says, chapter 21, verse 9, Vayeira Saras ben Agar ha-Mitzris asher yolda la'Avraham mitzachek. And Sarah saw this son of Hagar, the Egyptian woman, that had borne a child for Avram. Mitzachek literally means laughing. So Sarah sees Yishmael laughing. It's very interesting that Yishmael is referred to as the son of Hagar. I mean, he's not even referred to as Yishmael. That boy who was Hagar's son. Verse 10, Vatomer la'Avraham garesh v'amoazos v'yespana. So Sarah says to Abraham, expel this maidservant and her son, Klo yirash ben v'amoazos im b'ni im Yitzchak, because this child of a maidservant shouldn't be inheriting your legacy with my son Yitzchak. Avram was very averse to doing it. God tells him to go ahead with it. But let's go to the Ramban. What does mitzachek mean? She saw him laughing. Somebody said a joke. I mean, what does mitzachek mean? What was so bad about what she saw? Ramban on pasuk test mitzachek. He starts off citing Rashi, lashon avodah zarah, lashon ritzicha, lashon gilui arayos. There are places in Tanakh that this word of laughter connotes idol worship, murder, and inappropriate sexual activity. So according to the Rashi, she saw him doing all kinds of terrible stuff. Meirivim Yitzchak al Yerusha, v'yomer ani b'chor, v'yoresh pi shnayim. Medrash says that Yishmael was having a dispute with Yitzchak regarding the inheritance. He said, let's just clarify something. We know who the firstborn is, me. I'm the older son. I should get a double portion. V'yotzin l'sada v'noto kashto, v'yorabo chitzin. So big brother takes little brother out to the field and he starts firing arrows at him, seeing how close he can get. Okay. So this, the Rashi explains, this medrash is a combination of the word mitzachek and also the context. Sarah says, I don't want him to inherit with my child. So who was talking about inheritance? So that's kind of where the medrash gets it from. That part of what was going on between them was a discussion about inheritance. That's Rashi with the medrash. If you go to the end of this lengthy Ramban, it's like the last 10 lines or so. In mine, it's a new paragraph. He says, I think the pshat is as follows. This was the day that Yitzchak was weaned. She saw him mocking the big party. Like, what's the big deal with Yitzchak? What's the big celebration? That's why the pasuk refers to him as the son of Hagar, because the point is she was incensed that this boy who wasn't even her child is mocking the excitement of her child that was born. Let's just clarify something. He's the maid servant's son. So you know what that makes him? That makes him the servant. And he's mocking the master's son, the master and the mistress's son. What are you talking about? So she says, she refers to him as the child of Hagar, and she talks about this let's expel the maid servant. So I don't want him punished in any way. I just want him out of the picture. I want him out of the picture. I don't want him to be raised in the family. I don't want him to be part of the inheritance. And so she also says it's not going to be feasible for the child if his mother's not with him. So his mother should stay with him. So that's a very, very different shot. According to Rashi, she saw him doing extremely sinful things and possibly even endangering Yitzchak's life. According to Ramban, she saw him being disrespectful to the greatness of the celebration of Yitzhak, and this is her reaction. So we discussed this morning what it was about Avram that was a merit for Lot. We discussed both Rashi and the Ramban. We discussed the Ramban regarding the rationale of Lot's daughters to have sons with him. And we discussed Rashi and the Ramban in terms of what Sarah saw about Yishmael that made her tell Avram he should be expelled, and that God agreed that Yishmael should be expelled from the house. Okay.